I'm Elaine Unzicker. I work in metal. Yeah, this is metal. And it is technically chainmail, which is a series of rings interconnected. So it has one ring holding 4 other rings that connect to it. And because they're all loose, but welded shut individually, it creates a really beautiful flexibility. So I can just do this, I can do this, and that is the flowing feeling of the metal. That's what attracted me initially to work in this material. I do know how to take flat sheets of metal and hammer them and saw them and create objects with them. But this material has its own quality, its own way of being. So when I construct something, I have to think about its weight and its movement, and particularly since these are pieces that are on the body, I also have to think about how does it look when it's on the body. It's not like I can create something and assume that it's going to be okay. It's going to be okay once I see that the design is working within and around. And so it's a detailed process that I enjoy working with. And I was prompted to learn about chainmail when in graduate school, when my professor, Dennis French, said, you need to learn some new techniques. So I signed up for a workshop in chainmail. And when I was constructing chainmail, one ring at a time, wrapping wire around a dowel rod, that whole thing, or a metal rod, sorry, and then sawing the rings, making individual rings, I discovered it was something that felt really natural to me. And that was something that kind of drew me in. And I still did other things besides it, but it kind of stuck with me. It's a material I really love. And it also makes my work very unique. So, but there is something that's really cool about it. The way I work, the material is stainless steel. It's not as heavy as you might think. So I can wear a big object like this. I can flow in it, I can move in it, and it's more like a blanket, like a heavy blanket. So it feels very grounding. I feel comfortable in it. And the metal is not harsh, it's soft. These are all the things that I like about the material. And then, there's just something about working in metal when it seems to be sort of fiber-like that's interesting. People oftentimes will say, is this knitted? And I'll say, no, it's not knitted, and it's not crocheted, because if it was, then the metal would be completely stiff. So it's the fluid quality that I'm most interested in. I started out as a jeweler. I still like working in the jewelry format because oftentimes my ideas for bigger pieces come through these smaller pieces. And the jewelry is something that's more intimate, it's something that's more close to a person, it's closer. So it can invite you in, it can have space for a different kind of conversation with a person or with somebody who sees it. And jewelry can take all kinds of forms, so I can be expressive, it's just that it's smaller. So working in this scale gives me the opportunity to work differently because they need to do different things. The jewelry, I really want it to be something that somebody feels comfortable in and also moves with them, which this material does, and gives you a sense of your own style, because it's a unique object. So you're really showing something that people will actually ask you questions about. And isn't it great to have somebody ask you a question about what you're wearing, which also identifies more, comes back to around like who you are, what this is for you, how does it feel for you? All of those kinds of questions might be just might be something that a person would ask you. That's very cool. So today I'm wearing the jacket, which is called Invincible. And I'm also wearing earrings. These are the long earrings with pearls. And this is just my favorite style. I like them because they're super lightweight and they make a statement. So that's my thing. I like this is the rolled necklace with pearls, which is really interesting because of this material. It lays, I want to say that it lays on your neck in a way where the weight is distributed evenly. So you're not feeling it at the back of the neck. It's just there. It's very comfortable to wear. So this is why this one is one of my favorites, the rolled necklace. And then this, which you might not be able to tell, is one of my gloves. And the gloves are great because they're adjustable. So I can open this up for somebody who has a bigger wrist, and I can close it again. So there's a number of different sizes here in this one piece. And of course, you know, they'll flop down a little bit. It's kind of like a bigger bracelet, and that's often how people think about my gloves. But imagine shaking hands with somebody while you're wearing this. They will remember who you are, or just grabbing a glass and drinking with it, which is really lovely. It's a beautiful piece to wear because it is really interesting, unusual, memorable. I have pieces that really would continue to live beyond you and to be passed down, and somebody would say, oh yeah, I remember her wearing that. That's a fun thing. And it can mean a lot to people. As an individual, it can mean a lot. So my objects are like that. So chainmail has this connotation about it because it was used in war, it was used under armor. It has a historical reference. So my work also has a historical reference. But here's the thing I really want everyone to know. I call it authentic metal lace. The reason I call it metal lace is because the way I'm creating with it gives it a more feminine, softer quality, and a quality that has its own mysterious feeling around it. And that feeling can be empowering. I've put pieces on people and they've had this sensation that they could then have the conversation that they've been avoiding with that person because it wasn't going to be an easy conversation. These pieces kind of have a sense of giving you the security to be able to move forward in a new way, to be able to move forward in a way that is okay for you. But sometimes maybe it's not even of what you're saying. Maybe it's even how you are, how you present yourself, how you feel inside. Maybe that is the quality that you receive from wearing one of my pieces. I think my pieces also just kind of give people the sensation of being who they want to be. They're expressive. My pieces are expressive. They're not sitting back. It's not a typical piece. It means that people will see you and people will ask questions. So it's a very direct process. And they're a little flamboyant. Yippee! Yippee! We get to do that! You know, that's fun. That's what they can be theatrical. Maybe you need to be at an event where you have to talk to a lot of people and you need to be seen. It can help you do that. You know, I actually at times feel a kilter or not myself. And when that happens, I make sure that I leave the house with one of my pieces on, because it kind of brings me back to my authentic self, back to who I really feel I am. I'd encourage anybody to do that, to find whatever piece that is for them, whether it's my work or somebody else's or something else beyond that. Do what it takes to get that part of you that feels like strangely empowered, that feels authentic to you and you only, because we really are unique individuals looking for our place here. This piece is called Armored Dreams, and it has quite the story. People will ask, how long did it make? And I have to say about 5 years. Originally, this dress appeared in a dream, and the dress was supposed to have a big boof around the bottom of it. And in the dream, I just kind of went, my material doesn't boof out. My material moves close to the body. So I just let it go. A year passed, and the same dream appeared. Same dress, but in each instance, it's a big party. I'm wearing this dress. I'm bumping into people because the boof's so big. And it's really a fun party, and nobody seems to mind that I'm hitting them with my dress. Is this really fun? But I have this dream the second time, and I'm like, oh, it doesn't do that. Another year passes, it shows up again in the dream. And, you know, when you run into something 3 times, or, you know, it's very obvious that it wants to speak to you. So this dress was speaking to me while I was sleeping. I experimented a lot with this dress, and I did actually create something that boofed out a lot. But I didn't like it with the top of the dress. The design didn't go together. It was like 2 completely different elements that didn't actually become one. So I took apart the bottom part again. And then this part happened. So it still has a boof, which is this metal rod. And this metal rod fits through the material. So it actually is creating this wave-like effect in the front. And it's a piece that will stay straight and continue to do this wavy effect on its own. The back of the dress won't do that, it'll flow more. And because I learned how to do a boof, I could do it at a later date. I can do a different dress that does that. When seeing this closer, you'll see this little element that is somewhat flower-like, and it has a calla lily quality to it that came about because my calla lilies were growing, and I saw the shape and I went, oh, that's the best shape for this element, because it couldn't just be a rod sticking through it. It had to have like a elegance to go throughout the dress, to relate to the top of it, to relate to the whole piece. And this piece shows two different patterns, or two different sizes of rings is what I'm trying to say, which actually relates and looks like two different patterns. And so we have the smaller ring and then the bigger ring. Sometimes I like to use that because it creates that effect. It's just a really neat thing to do. This, you'll see, has a little triangle cut out of the material, and this is just a really beautiful accent for the piece as well. When it's worn, really flows out with the person. I have a number of purses over here, and they're all a little different. This is the companion purse, actually, and a cell phone would fit inside. It's got this fun little connection between the big rings and the small ring. It's a nice one because it's just different. This one I love because of the angles. It's called Cara, and I love the little castings. That's what these are. That's what this one is too. They're castings from a catalpa pod off of the catalpa tree, and that pod is a really long kind of pod. I think people called them cigar-shaped pods, and it has this wonderful texture. And you know, obviously I like texture because the chainmail kind of has a texture, but then I like using these little organic elements because they have a texture, and it's nice having the organic quality with the metal kind of hard edge quality. I like the combinations of being different. And then these actually are little pouches. They do open up. This one is really interesting because this one and this one have bottoms. And this is a stainless steel plate on the bottom where the material was wrapped all the way around with rings. And then there would be an opening seam where I would stitch it back up and then weld all those rings where they're connected. Everything's welded. But I picked this one up because also it has, I'm gonna see if I can do this, has an adjustable strap. So it can be long or short, so that's a really great bag. It's just called Victoria, after my niece. I can't help it. It was kind of made after the Ojai fire. And it has the representation of the fire and the earth, the scorched earth, and then a little green over here for the new growth. We artists always like to create things from our experiences, and this is one where I really created from my experience. And then this one is just fun. It also has like the plate and this little stem, which is I would say this, so it's so funny. It's the stem of a poppy pod. It's cast in bronze. And again, just finding a different little shape makes me happy. It's just like another element that I can use and create with. Here I have the rolled necklace with onyx beads on it, and they're faceted onyx, and I really like natural stones, so I'm going to use real metal and real stones and real objects most of the time. But this is gives you a different addition. I don't always have pearls. Occasionally I use other things. This is a one of a kind top. And it's really wonderful. It has this fold, which is pretty wonderful, and is very flattering on kind of a taller, thinner body. And then it's also really low in the back. So it's a very sexy piece in the back, really different. And it uses kind of the straps are the small ring and the medium size ring. So it gives you a little variety. This piece is my vest, and the vest is so cool because you can wear it lots of different ways. It's the piece that looks different and is quite unusual on each person. Each woman's body, it fits them differently. But this is the longer one, which a lot of women like because of the extra length. They just like the versatility of that. So that's one of my top pieces. It really does well. And the reason it has a chain with a clasp on each end. You can hook it anywhere in the piece. I would guess that there are ways to wear it that I haven't talked about. And oftentimes people will tell me hey, you can do it like this. I just found this out. And that's really fun to hear. And this piece is kind of unusual. It's a smaller vest, which is also adjustable, so I can make it bigger or tighter. It's on the tight side right now. And then it just has these dangles, and the dangles just go down the side and the front, and they move with you, so you're gonna feel them as you move around, as you walk around, as you dance. They're gonna fly out a little bit, so you make sure you have space around you. But it's a super energetic piece to wear, and it just has a different feeling about it than most of the other wearable pieces. And this is my tank top, which I adore this piece. I wear it a lot. I find the tank top or the smaller, I think it's the camisole that I have too. I like both of those, and I like to wear them underneath the jacket that I have. This is a one-of-a-kind piece, and I'm using both stainless steel here and sterling. And then this wonderful stone, actually. It's Alaskan coral, which also people look at it and they think it's a stick or a piece of wood, and it actually is coral. What's fun about this is a new piece, a fairly new piece. What's fun about it is that how it's connected is not typical. It is kind of something I figured out from a prior piece that I made with the coral, and it has this little silver holder, basically like clasping around it, but it's not set like a bezel. And a bezel is typically flat, and you have a stone that sits in it, and then it's hammered around the stone. And you can do a bezel with coral, but it would like sit flush all the way around. In this case, this engineering created like a little flap around it, and then there's a hole drilled between the two pieces, and the jump ring that holds them together, the metal is pressed around the stone enough that it holds it in place. It gives it a different effect, and kind of more like it's swinging. To me, it's more like it's swinging from the chainmail. I just like the effect. I like putting together different shapes with the stone, creating a different feeling for the piece. So it's fun making one-of-a-kind pieces of jewelry that you're not going to find anywhere else, and that speak to me, because as an artist we like to create things that fit that way, that are one-of-a-kind, which means that the one-of-a-kind person is going to speak to them. And then that means it's their piece. That means it's like part of them. That's a really beautiful part of being a jeweler. It's so intimate, it's so personal, it's so special for that person. And that's when it's really precious. This is a one-of-a-kind piece. This is the Crown of Enlightenment. It was made during the pandemic. It's kind of a very different kind of crown. Of course, you want the focus to be in the front of the crown, of course. But using the chainmail to make it meant that I had to have a structure that it would fit over so that it wouldn't flop down, because this is so flexible, the material is so flexible, it would normally flop down. Little engineering feat here. I really focused on adding a lot of different details to it because it's a crown, it can have a lot, right? We can just go overboard with a crown, anything and everything. So it has malachite, it has kyanite. Then the little castings from the catalpa pod, little golden pearls. I like that it kind of float. When you wear this, it's going to jingle across the side of your head a little bit. I think this is onyx, and that's a fire agate. So yeah, a little bit different. It's fun to wear a crown. And why shouldn't we all crown ourselves when we feel like it? I mean, it gives you permission to be that glorious person that you are. And even if you didn't wear it, maybe seeing it gives you that feeling that I am glorious. I am that person, that individual that's powerful. Because we all are powerful. Sometimes it takes a little bit of a push or a movement into some other direction. But I hope that my work actually empowers people to feel that, to really own it, to really own how powerful each person is, to really be yourself. This is some of my earlier work. This is a wall sculpture. These are actually electroformed copper. And electroforming is a pretty unusual technique, but it's kind of like how they do babies' shoes, where they metal plate them. It's a form of building up layers and layers of plating. So this initially started as a wax, and then I put a electrical conductive paint on the wax, and then it's in a bath. I know this is way too complicated. It sits in a bath, and an electrode is turned on, electricity is turned on, an electrode is turned on. And the copper particles, there's also a copper plate in there, and those copper particles come off the copper and go onto the electrically conductive paint. So this is like layers and layers of tiny little copper particles. It looks heavy, it looks thick, but if I turned it to the side, you can see that it is a very thin sheet. It weighs hardly anything. But so this is one of my earlier pieces. It's kind of collage-like here because I have the copper, I have these hawthorns, and there's a metal plate in the center. This is part of a series called The Agony of Loss. And it was just a really difficult time for me. I was going through a divorce. So, you know, as again, everybody puts their energy into their art. It's sort of my way of working through the emotions. I mean, that's how they come through. It's a powerful piece. And it's something that's kind of just a marker of that time. So I have pieces like this. I have pieces of jewelry that I made where I've done all the chainmail one ring at a time and put them together, including making all the rings, including all of this, you know, just all of that, which is really, really time consuming. But I was much younger. I was much younger, and I think you just go through processes where you find things out of what works and what doesn't work, and you need to explore more because you're kind of learning what the fabric and the material can do for you, and how does it feel in your hands, and how does it form. It's kind of necessary to have like a long span of time in some ways to get to the point where you can create like a big dress. I mean, all of the techniques and information I used to make jewelry actually went into the construction of one of my dresses, because those dresses are actually made sometimes using jewelry techniques. That's why they're involved. That's why they take the time that they do. They're not going to be a fast piece. Making a bigger piece is always a bit of a challenge, and it's more interesting for me. And I kind of like working in the two different scales. The jewelry can be faster. I can see the result quicker. The bigger pieces are like sitting somewhere in their stage, in their morphosis, kind of, and they're not going to be finished that fast. And that's just like a lot of things we do in life. Some things are fast, some things are slow. It's a building, and we're building to do different things all the time. Every day something new is happening, something is being created, something is forming. That's my process. My body is in with my art. The whole thing, the whole picture, all of it. They're not separate to me. My art is a part of who I am.